Sister Isabella is a real bad bitch. The Promised Neverland returns, and after a very shocking first episode, it looks like the main story is getting ready to kick into high gear. Will these children be able to escape this evil orphanage, or will they end up as someone's entree? I don't want to be jumping the gun or anything, but I have a feeling that The Promised Neverland is probably going to be the most popular show this season, and it's so damn easy to see why. I mean, the first episode alone was just such a shocking twist. I had no idea that this entire series was going to be about children who were being raised to be food for a group of alien-like demons. And, well, that's truly what's going on here. I didn't go into this series expecting some sort of crazy action spectacle. In fact, it looks like the bulk of the series is going to be a little bit more about strategy, about how these characters are going to be able to keep their cool, to trick all of these people who are trying to quite literally eat them, and to make a strategic escape. And we really get to see the main cast come into their own in this episode, with Emma, Norman, and thankfully, Sasuke cosplayer Rei. Yes, Rei looks like he's finally going to be joining them in their quest to try and escape, as well as escape with everyone in the entire orphanage. But Rei brings up a really good point. I mean, this is the only place that they've ever lived their entire life. The only thing that they've ever known is this orphanage. Everything outside those walls is a complete and utter mystery, and I have to be with Rei on this one. If there are creatures out there that are quite literally eating humans, there's probably some sort of really fucked up demon-like society on the outside that is just wishing to shish kebab all of these children. And they're gonna have to come up with some sort of survival strategy in order to survive on the outside world. But for now, we're just going to focus on actually escaping. One thing that I really loved about this episode is how realistic it was actually handled. And I know that's strange for the overall concept of the show, but Emma, the very next day, is still completely freaked out over everything that she saw the night before. I mean, can you really blame her? She learned the truth about their actual existence, and one of her very close friends, who might as well have been a family member, her little sister, was dead and is planned to be eaten by creepy fucking monsters. How can she keep her cool? How can she not say anything to any of her friends? Just watching her interact with all of the other orphans in the morning is just such a stark contrast to the beginning of the series, where she was so happy and bubbly the entire time. When Isabella showed up, the freaking mama of the entire house, man, that was tension beyond belief. She couldn't even put on a smile in front of her. But then waltzes in Norman, who's acting like nothing has even happened at all. And it's in this moment that I realize that not only is Norman a genius, but the dude has got some balls. He realizes that if they're going to get out of this situation, they're going to have to act their asses off. They're going to have to put on a lot of fake expressions, and doing it in this oppressive way has got to be incredibly taxing on them. So throughout most of the episode, they're trying to figure out a plan of how to save people and how to get out of this place. And they even go as far as to going beyond the borders that they've never been before. And they end up finding this like giant concrete wall, which is incredibly thick, and there's pretty much no way to climb it. Until they realize, well, maybe if we just get a rope, we'll be able to get out of here. But this also brings about another crazy discovery, the fact that they might actually have trackers within their body. And I love the way that this is actually shown in this episode, especially because when Sister Isabella actually calls back all of the children after their playtime, you get to see that Norman and Emma are like the last ones there. They're completely exasperated. They have no breath. They're just like freaked out, like, man, if we didn't get here in time, we were going to be fucked. But another one of these kids is still out there in the middle of nowhere, and Sister Isabella decides that she's going to go try and find her. And of course, like a freaking tracking ninja, she's able to find this girl, and that's when they realize that they probably have trackers somewhere within their body. Where that is, how that works is still a complete and utter mystery, as we still don't really know like how crazy the technology in this world is. I just cannot wait to see what the outside world of the Promised Neverland actually looks like, as it's going to give me a much better idea of what these kids are actually going to be up against. And then that leads to what might be the most shit-your-pants-inducing moment of the entire episode, where after returning, you get to see Emma and Norman, who are still going over their plans, with Norman constantly trying to get her to just chill the fuck out, put on a fake smile, and everything's gonna be fine. And you have this scene where Emma goes into this room where she's looking at some of this artwork that was done by Connie, when suddenly, just like out of freaking nowhere, Isabella is just right there, right in front of her face, like fucking Michael Myers just walking through a doorway. You don't even see him, you don't even hear him. She's like a freaking serial killer. It's horrifying, and it's in this moment that she outright just challenges Emma, like saying, "Were you at the gate last night? Were you fucking around? Were you trying to figure out if we actually eat kids?" Luckily, Emma is able to put on her bravest face and even goes as far as to actually hug her and say, "No, nothing's wrong, and I love you, Mama, everything's great." Even when she joins up with Norman, you get to see that she calls both of them out, saying, "Were both of you at the gate last night? Did you leave that bunny there? Am I gonna have to fucking season you, marinate you, and cook you on a grill?" Basically, every single time Isabella's in the room now, it's going to be incredibly creepy, as she truly knows something's up. Someone brought that bunny there, and she's trying to figure out who that actually is. And that leads to another fantastic scene, where after escaping from the clutches of Isabella, and that leads to another really poignant scene, which I thought was really powerful, when Emma and Norman are walking away, and they suddenly just start to break down, breathing heavily, with Emma just collapsing on the floor. But Norman still manages to keep his cool while still shaking, which I think was a really powerful moment, reaches out for her, and when they both grab each other's hand, the shaking stops. It's just a really good symbolic moment to show things are fucked up, I'm scared, you're scared, but we got each other's backs. There was no dialogue during this moment, just those motions showed so much about those characters. At the end of the episode, they decide maybe they should let Ray in on the situation when we learn that he's also kind of a ninja and has just been listening in the entire time. They explain the entire situation, and of course, he just immediately believes it, but he's of the mindset that they should just escape, just those three. Everybody else is basically going to be dead weight. And Emma decides to say, "No, that's not going to happen. We're either leaving with everyone or we're not leaving at all." Even Norman is okay with this, as it's made pretty clear that he has something for Emma, maybe some sort of feelings, and whatever Emma wants to do, Norman is all completely for it. So we have these three characters now who all have incredible character traits, both mentally and physically, and I'm sure it's going to be awesome watching them come up with these strategies in order to escape from this place. But another wrench has been thrown into the cogs, and that's the addition of another brand new character who goes by the name of Sister Krone. Krone is going to be basically the assistant to Mama in this series, which of course means there's another pair of eyes in the house, which of course means more chances to get caught and end up getting cooked. So what's the rundown on this episode of The Promised Neverland? Such a great fucking show. I really love this, and I'm so reluctant to want to dive in even more. Like, I'm kind of tempted to want to read the manga version, but I really want to see how the anime is going to play out. I'm really hoping that it's going to be successful enough that it's going to be able to complete whatever sort of storyline is going on in the manga version, as everything I've been seeing so far is just so atmospherically strong. And I commented on it briefly in the last episode, but Jesus, is the intro of this show just not like fucking perfect in almost every single way? I mean, the song itself by Overworld is incredible, but it's matched so well with the actual imagery of the show. And wow, the imagery doesn't give away anything about the story, which is so good, and yet it still manages to sort of like encapsulate all of the feelings of the show, the helplessness of these kids as they try to escape. It's a great intro. It might be one of the best of the overall season. I fucking love it. And I especially love the characters in this series for how incredibly realistic they're actually handling this situation. In any other anime, the main character, which is Emma, would have just been all happy, bubbly smiles by the next day, but the way that she handled the situation was exactly how anyone would handle it after seeing such really disturbing stuff. But it's actually Norman who ends up bringing her back in and bringing her back to life. It shows there's going to be a lot of teamwork in this series, and I think it's going to be one of the best things about it. Apparently, this series is also classified as a horror, and I didn't really think about that in the first episode. I saw it as more of just kind of like a thriller. But after watching Isabella in this episode, especially the scene where she actually just like pops up in front of Emma, I'm convinced it's a horror at this point. That did actually make me jump out of my chair, and I didn't expect it, and it's one of the few times I've watched like a series with horror elements that quite literally not only startled me, but actually made me feel fear. From a production standpoint, I also think it's just a really nice, clean show. I also like what they're doing with kind of the color schemes in some of these episodes, where a lot of the times there's absence of color, except for, like, the eye color of a character. It's a great way to sort of express the mood, as well as that one scene where Isabella is getting ready to go after that girl. There was just something in that moment that was just really terrifying, especially when she was analyzing the situation, noticing that they weren't hanging out where they usually were. You didn't have Norman and Ray by the tree. You can see that Isabella is going to to be one hell of a horrifying villain for the show. And I can't wait to learn more about, like, why she's even doing this, because, I mean, clearly she is human, unless, of course, she's simply just a sheep in wolf's clothing. She could be one of these demons in disguise, and even though she looks human, there are a lot of things about her that come across as very robotic and disturbing. So I can't wait to learn about that, and of course this new character of Sister Krone, who looks like she's going to be putting on much more of a bigger, like, facade, and you can see a lot of that in the intro, where she seems to have a very close relationship with a lot of the younger kids, being able to manipulate them with her overall kindness and sweetness. I can't wait to learn a little bit more about her character and how it's going to add much more of a dynamic to this show. Really, this was just another great episode of this series, which is why I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. You guys need to check it out. Sister Krone hunts the children like the freaking predator, and apparently there's a traitor amongst the children. That's right, it's time for another episode review. We're going to be taking a look at the 3rd episode of the Promised Neverland, which was a formal introduction to the character of Sister Krone, who is absolutely terrifying. She might be a brick house of a woman, but man, can she sprint like a goddamn cheetah. The Promised Neverland absolutely excels when it comes to building up its tension, and this episode was certainly no exception, as Emma, Norman, and Ray are desperately trying to prime these children up to escape. They're not telling them exactly what's going on here, and I think if they did that, it would probably result into some sort of massive panic, especially because a lot of these children are very young. One of them would probably end up spilling the beans, and before you know it, all of these kids are going to end up at your local grocery store. That's why I think they're just going to try and trick them by doing things like playing tag and playing in the woods and working on their abilities to run really fucking fast, and of course how to jump over rocks like a freaking Olympian. However, this ends up gaining the attention of Sister Krone, who is going to be the next big obstacle in the series. She comes across as a more psychotic version of Isabella, where Isabella is very calm and collected. Krone is the type of character who seems like she's going to do anything in order to claw her way to the top. And you know she's crazy because she talks to herself. And again, I'm talking to a camera right now. Who the fuck am I to talk? The thing about Sister Krone, however, is that she's very different from Isabella in the sense that she's not really good at showing her more evil side. Like, there's a lot of times where she seems like she's really good at interacting with the much smaller children, but she still has these moments where she's just got the creepiest damn look on her face, especially during the big chase scene where she decides to play tag with all of the children, where Sister Krone is going to be it, and she has to find everyone, and she pretty much is able to do this almost effortlessly. She actually manages to catch Emma in a very tense scene, which almost seems as if she truly knows that she's the one who was there that night with the bunny, and she ends up stalking her, just appearing directly over her, staring at her with the creepiest looking look on her face. However, she is not able to get Norman and Ray. You can see that this is really eating away at her at the end of the episode. You can see she's going to try even harder as she continues her journey to not only one-up Isabella, but also become the #1 mama in this village. And as if the series wasn't filled with enough paranoia, apparently one of these children is actually a spy and is feeding information to Isabella and Krone. And now we get to spend the rest of the series figuring out who that's going to be. And I think it's going to be really fun getting to see that happen, especially because at the end of the episode you can see that Emma is visibly disturbed when she's coming eye to eye with someone who could very well be this person. I don't know. Maybe there really isn't a spy at all, and this is all just sort of a plan to try and draw out Emma, Norman, and Ray that's been cooked up by Isabella. All I know is it's pretty interesting stuff. The series also actually manages to delve a little bit more into like the demon world a little bit. All of these people who actually raise these children as food. We don't get to see much of them, but it is kind of funny to see like a demon board mating. There's also a scene where Isabella is actually talking to another higher-up who apparently is known as the Grandmother. I'm assuming this is going to be another human who's probably in charge of all of these farms and someone she directly communicates with. But it is worth mentioning that Isabella decides to not tell any of them about the event with the bunny actually arriving, because that could cause all sorts of trouble and it could potentially ruin their product. I mean, nobody likes stringy meat. So what's the rundown on this episode of The Promised Neverland? The paranoia runs strong in another really awesome episode, which is incredibly tense and a great introduction to the character of Sister Krone. In the previous episode when she was introduced, I had no idea what she was going to be all about, but she definitely showed her true colors in this episode right here, and I can't wait to see more of her journey and ultimately how she's probably going to meet her come up. And she seems like the type of character who's going to be the perfect pawn for these children actually escaping, although she could always end up being a very big thorn in their side side as well, as she seems to be really good at creeping up on them, and I can't wait to see more of how they're actually going to end up escaping from her clutches. This episode also is doing a good job of finally starting to branch out and show some of the other children and their importance. There's this one girl who goes by the name of Gilda, who's a 10-year-old who looks like she's also going to be important, mostly because she has a distinctive character design, but also because she's starting to realize that there's something going on with Emma, Norman, and Ray, and she's probably one of the characters who's actually sort of spying on them, which is why they're coming up with the idea that there could be someone who's feeding information to Isabella and Krone. However, I really don't believe that's actually what's going on here. I think she genuinely wants to be a part of their plan, and she probably already knows that they're actually being raised as food. That's just my personal theory, but that's just kind of what I'm piecing together right here. Ultimately, though, this episode was a fantastic introduction to Sister Krone, a brand new villain for the series, who comes across as a very kind old lady who's just there to help out some kids, but she can just sort of switch that personality on the dime, and boom, she's a fucking monster. I can't wait to see more of her, and I can't wait to see more of how these kids are eventually going to escape from the farm. This is another great episode right here, which is why I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. A little long-winded in some parts, but overall, just like the rest of the series, immensely entertaining with some fantastic characters and a lot of twists and turns, which just ups the atmosphere, the tension, and of course, that dreaded awesome paranoia. Make sure to check it out, guys. If any of you did watch the episode, I would absolutely love to hear from you guys about it. You can tell me all your thoughts in the comment section below, and what you hope to see from the rest of the Promised Neverland. Thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next time. And as always, stay down there, baby.